Good day. So our topic for this segment is all about standard costing. Now, standards are benchmarks for measuring performance. These are also widely used in managerial accounting, where they relate the quantity and acquisition price or cost of the units used in making a product or providing services. Managers have to decide regarding the prices of materials or salaries to pay and the quantities of labor hours to use, including the overhead costs. So price standards specify how much should be paid for each unit of the input. So if either quantity or acquisition price of an input departs significantly from the standard, managers investigate the discrepancy to find the cause of the problem and eliminate it. So that is standard costing. They are providing benchmarks or an estimated price instead of the actual price. Then after that, they are going to compare the standard over the actual price and investigate the variances. So that's the nature of the standard costing. Continue. So in standard costing system, we have three basic parts. First, you have to establish predetermined standard performance level. The second is to measure the actual performance, and the last part is a comparison between standard and actual performance. So, in determining the predetermined or standard cost setting, so in essence, standard cost is the company's best estimate of the average cost to produce a single unit of product or service. So this cost estimate serves as the starting point for creating the relevant budgets. So when the firms plan to produce multiple units, managers use standard cost that is used to measure the performance. So aside from that, after getting or identifying the predetermined standard performance level, the second one is the cost control system measures the actual cost incurred in the production process. So kanina, we identify a predetermined rate. Now, we are going to get the actual cost incurred in the production. So, this predetermined rate and the actual cost of the production are then compared to get the variances. And these variances will be investigated. And this is not investigated only, but also they are given utmost importance and given a remedy to solve the variances. Kasi yung mga variances na yun is, for example, sa materials, it could be lack of quality, defective materials. So it will really affect the materials or the item per unit. So this must be investigated as much as possible to prevent the variances in the future production. So we have different types of variances. We have materials price usage variance, okay, and the materials quantity variance. So we have variances on the price and the quantity of materials. Same with the variances to the labor. We have labor rate and the labor efficiency. And we have also variances to the overhead. So actually madami yan sila. We have four: variable overhead rate variance and variable overhead efficiency variance. Then we have also fixed overhead spending variance and fixed overhead volume variance. So we have here an illustration to furtherly understand the different types of variances. Okay, so assume that the company manufactures smoked crabs and its smoking department with the following ingredients on a per lot basis. So on this portion, we have the standards or the predetermined, and below are the actual data for the month. So the standards and the actual data will be compared later on for us to know the different variances and the possible causes of those variances. So we have material standards, 3,000 pounds of carbs at 5 pesos per pound. So that's 15,000. The labor standard, 40 hours at 15 pesos per hour. We have also for the variable overhead standard. So this will be used in the computation of variable and Variable overhead spendings, okay, variances. So 5 hours yan at 150 per machine hour. 150 pesos is the budgeted monthly variable overhead of 15,000 and a budgeted activity of 100 peso machine hour or 100 machine hours. So we have also fixed overhead standard, that's 8 hours at 140. So the 140 pesos is the budgeted monthly fixed overhead of 28,000 at the budgeted activity of 200 hours. Okay, so for our actual data in the smoking department are as follows. So we have number of lots produced, so that's 47,500 pounds for 20 lots. Okay, so pounds of crabs purchased, that's 60,450. The pounds of crabs used, so 60,450. So maganda na the crabs purchased and used were the same. Okay, kasi magkakaiba yan ng computation pagdating sa pag-compute ng variances. So we will be using the pounds of crabs used later. So we have price per pound of crabs purchased, 6 pesos. The labor hours incurred, the actual is 1,000 hours. We have the total labor cost incurred. For the 1,000 hours, we have 14,500. Therefore, ang actual per hour niya is 14.50 if we will think of it. So later on, we will validate if tama yung assumption natin. So the total variable overhead cost here is 19,000 and the machine hours incurred is 87. Okay, and the total fixed overhead cost is 30 while the hours of moving or waiting time incurred is 140 hours. Let us now solve the first variance, which is the materials variance. Materials variance is composed of materials price and materials quantity variance. Now here, so our actual, that's actual quantity and actual price. And for the budgeted, we are going to use actual quantity and the standard price. For the standard, we are going to use the standard quantity and the standard price. Now, okay, doon muna tayo sa actual for the actual cost. So we already know that the pounds used is 60,450. Then the actual price per pound of the crabs purchased is 6 pesos. Therefore, we landed to a solution of 362,700. Now, for the budgeted, same pa din yung gagamitin natin, the actual quantity, but now, we are going to use the standard price, which is 5 pesos. So, 60,450 times 5, that's 302,250. Now, for the standard, I know you are having a hard time. How did you get the 60,000 pesos, 60,000 pounds na quantity? So, this is how you're going to solve this one. So, the standard is 3,000 pounds yung kailangan nating materials. Okay, so look at that actual data. How many number of lots produced for the 47,500 pounds? So, we have 20 lots. Now, 3,000 pounds times the 20 lots, it's equal to 60,000. Okay? So, therefore, 60,000 will be multiplied to your standard price. So, that is 300,000 pesos. Now, okay, if nagtataka kayo bakit may mga UF dyan, actually, that's unfavorable and F stands for favorable. Maka-encounter natin yan later. So, ano yung nagiging basis natin? Paano natin nalaman na favorable siya or unfavorable? Etong babantay natin. Dapat si budgeted at saka si standard is mas malaki kaysa sa actual. Since we are estimating the budget and just estimating the standard price that we are going to incur, okay, but the actual exceeds our budgeted and standard. Therefore, mas malaki yung nagastos natin kaysa sa na-budget natin. Okay? So, it could be reasons to your, it could be due to your quality of your materials na nabili, siguro substandard. Kaya during the production process, instead na makasave ng materials, is gumastos kayo ng maraming materials. It's because madaling masira yung materials ninyo or may mga defective ones. Okay, yan yung mga isa sa mga disadvantage kung bakit natitipid ang mga companies. Pero hindi nila alam in actual or in analysis to their data or figures, hindi pala talaga sila nakasave. It's because maraming variance. Okay? So aside from that, the quantity purchase. Okay? So that's one of the reasons bakit nagkaka-variance ang materials. So here, if you are going to look at the price here is 60,450. That's the difference between the actual and the budgeted. So since mas mataas ang actual, therefore it is unfavorable. Now here, sa materials quantity, you need to deduct budgeted and standard. Now, but the standard is lower than the budgeted. Therefore, unfavorable pa din yung result niya by 2,250. So since pareho silang unfavorable, so like signs add. So, 60,450 plus 2,250. So, mali itong spending variance natin. We need to add 60,450 and 2,250. So, that's still unfavorable. Let us now solve for another type of variance, and that is labor variances. For the labor variances, we are going to solve labor rate variance, labor efficiency variance, and the spending variance. Now, we have also actual, budgeted, and standard pa din. Okay, for the actual, we need your actual hours and actual rate. So it was already given in the problem. So we have 1,000 actual hours and the actual rate is 1450. If you are wondering saan natin nakuha yung 14.50, it's total direct labor cost incurred, which is 14,500, divided by the direct labor hours incurred, which is 1,000 labor hours. Therefore, we could get our per hour is 14.50 and that is 14,500. For the budgeted, we need to use standard rate. Our standard rate will be found at the standard data. So, labor standard, that's 15 pesos per hour times 1,000 actual hours, that's 15,000 pesos. For the standard hours, if you're wondering how did we arrive for the 800 hours, so that's the required labor standard, 40 hours times the 20 lots. So that's 800 hours times 15 pesos, that's 12,000. Now, if we could look at the labor rate variance, so we are analyzing the price of it. So 14,000 yung actual at saka budgeted is 15,000. So therefore, we could see na the price is somewhat favorable by 500 pesos. It's because mas mababa si actual kaysa kay budgeted. So for us to know if favorable tayo, we need to have a lower actual cost than the budgeted and standard. Now here, mababa tayo ng 500, therefore nakatipid tayo ng 500. Ano kaya yung mga reasons bakit nakatipid tayo for the actual cost or the actual rate? It's because, okay, one of the factors here, wala tayong overtime. Mas madaling natapos ang trabaho, meaning nakatipid tayo. Okay, for the rate or the actual labor. Okay, so that's favorable by 500. Now for the efficiency. So we have budgeted of 15,000 and the standard of 12,000. We could see that the standard is lower than the budgeted. So it's somewhat not good. So it's unfavorable. Okay? So na-surpass natin or na-exceed natin yung standard natin na dapat 12,000 lang dapat. Okay? So there is a problem with our efficiency. I think. Okay? So it's because unfavorable siya. The factors are, I think sometimes it's a result of negotiated labor contract, and this indicates assigning multi-skilled, highly paid worker in a job that could be performed by a lowly paid worker. Siguro the job needs highly skilled worker, but since nagtitipid tayo, we tend to choose low paid workers. Kaya the efficiency is not good. So we have here 3,000 unfavorable. So if we are going to combine the spend for the spending variance, since unlike signs tayo, so 3,000 less 500 kasi favorable yung isa. So we could have a spending variance of 2,500 unfavorable. So that's how you solve your labor variances. We have to solve for the variable overhead variances. For the variable overhead variances, we are looking for the variable overhead rate variance and the variable overhead efficiency variance. Now, we have again actual, budgeted, and standard. So for the actual, that's actual hours times actual rate. Now, the actual hours and the actual rate are not given, but the total is given. So we have here at the actual data, the total variable overhead cost is 19,000 pesos. Now, for the budgeted, we have actual hours times standard rate. For the actual hours, it was already given, that's 87 pesos or 87 hours, while the standard rate is 150. So look at the standard data. So for the variable overhead standard, 5 hours at 150 machine hours. So therefore, our standard rate is 150. Now for the standard hours and the standard rate. So if you will look at to your actual or standard data, we cannot find 100. Okay, so for you to get 100 hours or standard hours, is we have 20 lots as our actual number of lots produced times ilan ba yung um, standard variable overhead. Okay? That's 5 hours. Okay? So 5 hours times 20 lots, it is equal to 100 hours. Now multiply 87 times 150, that's 13,050. And 100 times 150, that's 15,000. Now, if we are going to compare the actual versus the budgeted, so we could really say na this is unfavorable kasi 19,000 is higher than the budgeted, which is 13,050 pesos. So we have an overhead rate variance here of 5,950, unfavorable since actual is higher. Now here, for the efficiency, you could say that the budgeted is smaller than the standard. So our standard is 15,000, but our budget is 13,050 pesos. Therefore, we have here a favorable of 1,950. So yun lang yung dapat natin tandaan. Dapat si standard yung pinaka mataas among all. Kasi kapag malaki si standard, yun yung ano natin ini-expect na amount. Okay? Kapag nag-exceed yan, si budgeted sa kasi actual, meaning hindi na yan favorable sa atin. Kasi hindi natin na-estimate ng tama yung expenses natin or hindi natin na-utilize or na-minimize. Kaya mas malaki ang actual dito. Okay? So, kaya sa rate, unfavorable tayo since 19,000 is bigger than the budgeted. But here, standard is bigger than the budgeted, therefore it is favorable by 1,950. Now, for the total variance, deduct 5,000 unfavorable to 1,950 favorable. Therefore, our total variances is 4,000 unfavorable. We are now on the last variance, which is the fixed overhead variances. So again, we are going to compute for the fixed overhead spending variance and the fixed overhead volume variance. So, ayan. So, we still have actual, budgeted, and standard. Okay? So, for the actual, since the actual hours and the actual rate is not given, but here we are given the total. So, that's the total fixed overhead cost on the actual data. We have 30,000 pesos. Now, for the budgeted, we need the budgeted hours. So, ang budgeted hours, makikita natin yan sa standard data and the standard rate. Now, if we could look at your standard datas, okay, so punta tayo sa fixed overhead. So, in fixed overhead, it's 8 hours at 140. So, 140 will be our standard rate. Move of weight or wait time 140. Budgeted monthly fixed overhead is 28,000 at a budgeted activity of 200 hours. Therefore, our budgeted hours is 200. So 200 times 140 is equals to 28,000 pesos. for our standard, okay, standard hours and standard rate. Since kukunin pa natin tong standard hours at that's actually ilan ba ang need ng hours for fixed overhead. So that's 8 hours times the actual lots. So that's 20. So 8 hours times 20 lots, that's 160 hours. So 160 times 140, that's 22,400. So we already get the total. So it's time for us to solve for the variances. Now actual is 30 and the budgeted is 28. Therefore, mataas ang actual and we could say that it is unfavorable by 2,000 since mataas ang actual kaysa sa budgeted. So our fixed overhead spending variance is 2,000 unfavorable, while here our fixed overhead volume variance, mas mataas si budgeted kaysa kay standard by 5,600. So therefore, standard is lower. Therefore, it is still unfavorable to the company. Kasi hindi natin na-meet yung standard na 22,400. So that's 5,600 unfavorable. Therefore, the total variance, add both sides kasi same lang naman sila, unfavorable. Therefore, the total variance is 7,600 unfavorable. So that's how you solve fixed overhead variances.